Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, Labour MPs are calling on Jeremy Corbyn to do more to root out anti-Semitism in the party. Last night, there were angry exchanges at the party's weekly meet-up of its MPs in Westminster. While outside, around 1,000 people met on Parliament Square in a rally organised by the Board of Deputies of British Jews and the Jewish Leadership Council to protest at what they see as Jeremy Corbyn's failure to root out anti-Semitism in the party. Our Ellie Price went along.
Well, I reckon there are probably several hundred people here at the rally on Parliament Square. We understand that the letter from the Board of Deputies and the JLC has been delivered to Jeremy Corbyn in Parliament. He's already issued a counter-statement in which he said that he will always be an ally against anti-Semitism. But the message from this protest is enough is enough.
I'm not voting Labour again under Jeremy Corbyn. I think he's absolutely horrendous leader of the Labour Party.
Is there anything that he could say or do now?
Nothing.
He can root out all the pockets of anti-Semitism, which he referred to, and it's more than pockets, and actually stand up and no longer be associated with the people who are clearly anti-Semites and anti-Israel.
Oh, Jeremy's racist. Oh, Jeremy's racist.
You're protesting against your leader?
I'm protesting against anti-Semitism. I'm protesting against anybody who puts up Facebook sites supporting murals which are disgusting. And I'm just saying that I want to stand with people here.
Well, while the rally is going on in Parliament Square here, there is now a counter-rally going on, though far fewer, of people in support of Jeremy Corbyn.
Tokenist.
Right, can I ask you, sorry to interrupt your argument, but why are you arguing?
Corbyn is blatantly anti-Semitic and racist, and these people have still supported him. It is ridiculous to smear him with anti-Semitism or racism. It's absurd.
This is not about Jeremy Corbyn and about his anti-Semitism. This is about trying to stop discussion about Israel.
Ellie Price reporting there on that protest. Well, a little earlier I spoke to the author and comedian David Baddiel, who is Jewish and is a long-time Labour supporter. I began by asking him if he thought there was a problem with anti-Semitism on the left.
Jews are the only ones who apparently have a high status, bad thing as well, which is they're in control and secretly pulling the strings behind global capitalism and own all the money and all the rest of it. So that idea, which is a racist myth, propagated first of all in the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, but goes on before that, is something that activates the left. And so what happens is the mix-up, the idea that Jews are actually powerful and actually moneyed and privileged or whatever, means that they are not the oppressed. And because the job of the left is always to fight on behalf of the oppressed, Jews don't quite fit into that.
Right, but as a Jewish Labour supporter, what do you make of the way this has been dealt with by Jeremy Corbyn?
Well, having done that great big historical framework that I was trying to do, I think the key element for Jeremy Corbyn and for people around him is not that they are anti-Semitic, but they find anti-Semitism a bit invisible. Because more important to them is this attack on what they see as the forces of oppression. So if you take the Mere One mural, for example, Jeremy Corbyn, in being supportive of that mural, which he was on the Facebook site, I don't think that's because he's anti-Semitic. It's because his primary instinct is always, we must fight the forces of oppression. So for him, he looks at that mural and all he sees are some bankers controlling the world. And he thinks, well, that's good that he's put that up there.
Well, he questioned the removal of it, didn't he?
Yes, he questioned the removal of it.
Yeah.
The point is, at that point, his Facebook post, and he says, I didn't see it. And that's the point, is anti-Semitism is kind of invisible to people like Jeremy Corbyn to some extent because they are more interested in this idea of fighting the good fight against capitalism. And so when people decide to yoke together Jews and sort of grotesque capitalist figures, sometimes they can't see that because all they're interested in is categorising the capitalists in a bad way.
Right. Is that an excuse? Are you an apologist?
No, I think it's an excuse. I think it's just the discourse that they swim in. They swim in this discourse. And obviously it's been made worse by Israel, because for a long time, for years, there was this idea, and I'm talking about the 18th, 19th centuries before that Jews were in control somehow of power and money or whatever. In fact, historically, because Jews weren't allowed to own property, so a lot of the time had to go into money lending and banking and whatever. So even that was a result of racism towards Jews. But then it was added to, in fairly recent years, by the idea that obviously Israel is a sort of imperial power, and another example of something that these people who fight oppression have to fight against. And the association of Jews with that, again, takes them out of the Venn diagram of people we need to fight for, rather than they become people we need to punch up towards.
Now, Jeremy Corbyn has done a mea culpa. He has been unequivocal in his apology, some say for the very first time.
Yeah.
Is that going to be enough?
I don't know. I mean, obviously, a lot of people have said this thing about, you know, it's a good thing to say. We'll have to see how the actions are. I mean, immediately, as soon as he does it, there are lots of people online and Labour MPs, indeed, saying, oh, this is just a trumped-up bit of, you know, Blairite plotting or whatever to smear, or this thing about smearing Jeremy Corbyn, whatever. Even Jeremy Corbyn has said, it's not a smear, there are problems, we have to deal with it. And yet there is going to still be people saying, because of St Jeremy, that obviously it's a smear. So I think those are the people, in a way. I think Corbyn he's done pretty well with this statement, but I think the people who just think Jeremy is a saint need to think, OK, listen to Jeremy, there is a problem here, and we need to deal with it.
How do you feel now as, you know, a Jewish man who has voted Labour in the past? Will you continue to do so? There
is racism against Jews. It's very prevalent in some quarters. We, I guess, look, if anywhere, to the left to protect people from anti-racism. And so if that can come round again to being the right thing, the thing that should happen, then, yeah, I'll carry on voting Labour. And
do you think they can win back the rest of the Jewish community, which support for Labour's collapsed?
I've no idea. I mean, some of them definitely won't. Some of them probably would never have voted Labour. Some of them are very, very pro-Israel and would find the stance against Israel always a bad thing. I think I'm interested in, you know, not voting for anything that would increase the percentage of anti-Semitism in this country. So if they can get round that, then I will carry on voting for them.
Ken Livingstone, do you think he should be just chucked out the party? Do you think that would send a strong message?
I think symbolically, definitely, it would send a strong message. I think what they've done is hold it off for a very long time possibly because Ken Livingstone is a close associate, an old friend of Jeremy's, probably because they don't want to alienate the left. So what they've done is just let it sort of stay and continually put off dealing with it. So I think they should deal with it one way or the other. My position on that is that stating as if it's a fact that Hitler supported Zionism is incorrect. That is not what happened, and Ken continually saying, I was just stating a historical fact, is just showing an incredible tin ear for the actuality of anti-Semitism that is created in that comment.
Thank you. David Baddiel talking to me a little earlier. Well, joining me here in the studio is the Shadow Transport Secretary, Andy MacDonald. Welcome to the Daily Politics. Is anti-Semitism invisible to Jeremy Corbyn because of the way he sees the world?
No, I think he's recognised that there is a real issue and we've got to drive anti-Semitism out wherever it appears. And I've just come back from the Shadow Cabinet and there is a real commitment and a determination to eradicate anti-Semitism from wherever it
Right.
appears.
Why has it taken so long for him to notice?
I think he's noticed all of his life. I mean, you heard him speak at the Cable Street event not that long ago and spoke with great emotion and passion about standing shoulder to shoulder with people who oppose fascism.
But what about anti-Semitism? Why has it taken so long for him to apologise unequivocally for what he calls pockets of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party?
Well, there is that recognition, and there's also been.
But why has it taken so long?
Heartfelt. I'm not so sure that he's ever said anything other than being vehemently.
No, he's never issued a statement. He's never issued a statement in the way he did yesterday and the day before.
Well, I'm sure, Joe. I'm absolutely convinced that Jeremy will have said these things over the years. It's part of his DNA to be so vehemently opposed to such offensive views.
Well, if that's the case, why have those pockets of anti-Semitism existed, much of it in Jeremy Corbyn's name?
Well, the identification is there. We're acknowledging and profusely apologising that obtains. But equal to that is the determination to properly get on top of this and weed it out wherever it appears. So the right response is there, and as I say, the commitment that I've just come away from that shadow cabinet meeting was absolutely tangible.
Right.
Everybody around the corner, with some very emotional accounts from people's own experiences. So we're entirely united in our determination to resolve this issue.
Right, you're entirely united, but unfortunately the statement that's just come out from the Jewish Leadership Council and the Board of Deputies of British Jews says, we note Jeremy Corbyn's apology, but we are almost 3 years into his leadership and words are no longer enough. Now we need action. What's that action going to be?
I think that's right. Words are not enough.
So what's the action?
And the action is to fully implement all of the Chakrabarti report.
Why haven't they been implemented?
Well, some of it has. Quite a good proportion of the Chakrabarti recommendations have been implemented by rule changes that's outlawing offensive language. Though anybody who would deny the Holocaust or try to seek some mitigation of it, those are prescribed activities that will lead to a disciplinary charge.
And that happened at the conference, didn't it, last year? Right, but when was the Chakrabarti report done?
Well, it is. It's Joe, you're knocking at an open door because it's far too long. It's been too long in being fully implemented. Well, I think that's a collective failure within the Labour Party. And we've got a new General Secretary who's taking up her appointment, and this will be absolutely #1 on her agenda to drive through all of the reforms that the Chakrabarti report set out. So please be reassured that that is taken with complete seriousness.
What other action are you going to take? Will you kick out Ken Livingstone from the party? I mean, he's been suspended for about 20 months. Why has a decision not been made?
Well, I'm not going to comment on individual cases, but the generic point is the correct one, and you make it well. This is ridiculous. It's taken far too long, 20 months. So now how we can resolve some of these issues is fulfil the recommendation of the Chakrabarti report, appoint the legal counsel within the organisation to have those panels of lawyers, because the reality is that people within the party come in to serve the party, to bring about those changes, and it gets highly technical. We've got to be infinitely better at speeding up these processes. It's quite ridiculous that it should take so long.
I mean, Andy MacDonald says he's not exactly sure why it's taken so long. It's ridiculous it's taken so long, and it will be dealt with now. What does that say to you about the leadership of the party?
Well, it's interesting you use the word leadership, because I think that's really the lesson to draw out of this. I've got no reason to believe that Jeremy Corbyn is anything other than absolutely resolute in his determination to root out any form of racism today. But I think what you've got to understand, if you've led a business or indeed you're leading a political party, is what he's done on your watch in your name is absolutely critical. It's about setting a tone, it's about the values that your leadership position allows. And I do think the Labour Party, to end up with 15 Labour MPs demonstrating yesterday, something has to have gone wrong in the leadership to get to that position.
Well, you know, that is being addressed. You can deal with the situation in front of you, and there is an absolute determination to implement all of those recommendations. Nothing could be further from more towards the top of Jeremy's agenda than this. This is the #1 issue for us all, and we will address it. We will drive it out.
Right, just finally on that leadership question, what should be done, and should something be done then about the supporters that David Baddiel talked about, supporters of Corbyn who say it's a smear against him and actually there's more anti-Semitism on the right than on the left? Would leadership show if he stood up and denounced those people?
We are saying consistently, this is not about a smear. Put that to one side. If you go down that path, you start to deny the very issue in front of you. To get involved in such a ridiculous conversation is to denigrate and devalue this critically important issue, and it is not about smears. The issue is anti-Semitism and how you get rid of it, and that's what we're focusing on.
Andy MacDonald, thank you for coming in.
I've been getting away with it all